So, in the past week or so, coincidentally aligned with Independence Day in the United States, a significant political drama of national consequence has unfolded. There was a challenge of leadership, an attempt to replace the current leader, a populist movement challenging the establishment amidst a tumultuous period of history, a decision-making body arbitrating between guilt and innocence, individuals seeking to gain power in a time of turmoil. And I really hate to pull the rug out from under you, but all of this unfolds in this week's Torah portion. If you jumped ahead to the presidential election or ongoing protests in Israel, we'll get there, but let's start in the book of Numbers with the biblical nation of Israel. Moses' cousin, a Levite named Korach, along with a couple of others from the tribe of Reuven, led a rebellion against their leader, Moses. 250 Israelites joined them at a moment of particular unrest after this generation learns that they will not make it to the promised land. With a perfect storm of popular unrest, an opportunity to gain power, and the individual with enough chutzpah to lead the charge, Korach and the rebellion confront Moses and his brother Aaron. They say, "You have gone too far. For all the community are holy, all of them, and Adonai is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above Adonai's congregation?" On its face, this is a valid criticism. Most of Jewish tradition, though, highlights the individual pursuit of power, and this instance is even held up as a prime example of a bad faith argument. It's not for the sake of the collective, but an individual's attempt at a power grab at Moses, Aaron's, and the Israelites' expense. So how do you think Moses responds to this criticism, this threat to his leadership? How would you respond? Someone directly criticizing and attacking your position. The Hebrew, the next verse is Vayishma Moshe Vayipol al Panav. Moses listened, Vayishma, and fell on his face, Vayipol al Panav. Moses listened and fell on his face. There is more to the story. Moses asks, are your leadership positions not enough for you, that you need the priesthood? He offers them a test of leadership that they do not pass. Moses brings the conflict to God, who decides strongly in favor of Moses and Aaron, and does not end well for Korach or his followers. We can get into those details another time, but I want to mainly focus on Moses' initial response. First he listened, and then he fell on his face. If you've faced direct criticism or opposition before, you might know it's not easy to earnestly and honestly listen to your challenger. In my experience, it's much easier to be defensive than to really hear, to prepare an exit strategy or a rebuttal before they're even done. It takes effort and practice to listen to our opposition. Well, Moses overcomes this defensive impulse, and he listens to Korach. And Moses' listening makes me wonder what it might look like if we followed this example on both leadership and personal levels. If presidential candidates listened to each other, or if leaders of different political parties listened to each other, or factions within political parties listened to each other. Or if supporters of these different presidential candidates, political parties, or factions within political parties listened to each other. Before closing ourselves off or thinking how we'll respond if we listened. And then Moses fell on his face. Falling on one's face is a common occurrence throughout the Bible. It even happens 2 more times in this Torah portion alone. But the circumstances in this case are highly unusual. It's common for someone to fall on their face while they're communicating with God or communicating with the prophet. It's a gesture of humility, of deference, and submission. When Moses falls on his face before Korach and the rebellion, he is on the opposite side of this usual power dynamic. Moses is the one in charge. Medieval commentators suggest that Moses was taking a moment to reflect, to pray, to take a beat before responding. And modern commentators suggest that Moses fell on his face to try and show that they are all equals as people before God, despite their different positions in the Israelite hierarchy. Whichever interpretation you prefer, Moses falling on his face also provides a model for confrontation. Imagine for a second if political leaders and news cycles took a moment to fall on their faces in this way and not to chase the most viral soundbite, but to pause and consider before responding. Taking a moment to respond is, of course, relevant in our own discussions and conflicts as well, and I'll add especially so as they occur more and more over social media and text messages where we have continuous access, limited filters, and no built-in natural reflection time. Secondarily, Moses' example of equality, too, is essential in these kinds of confrontations. Whether someone is a prophet like Moses, a priest like Aaron, a Levite like Korach, or any kind of Israelite, whether one holds public office, is a content expert, a political supporter, or someone just figuring it out, everybody is equal before God. Perhaps that's also what hit Moses so hard about Korach's criticism, is that there was an element of truth to it. All of the Israelites are holy, not just Moses and Aaron. And even so, the Torah still offers different roles, functions, and responsibilities in the administration of the Israelites, while ensuring equal dignity and holiness for everyone, whatever space one occupies in society. In contentious, divisive periods of national conflict, Moses reminds us that we are all equals before God. Later in the story, Moses tries to summon the rebellion, and they refuse. It's Moses who gets up and goes to them. At this moment, Moses actively chooses to engage with his opposition. People have always disagreed. People have always contested for power. It's within our capacity to do so effectively, relationally, and for the greater good. Like Moses, when we listen, fall on our face, and choose to engage, we can take one step closer to that promised land. Shabbat Shalom.